Hi everybody, this is Sam Lemheney. I'm the Chief of Shows and Events. I'm here interviewing Paul Tickle, who's been with us for 51 years, believe it or not, as our show manager and various other positions. Here to interview and hear his story and get his perspective and his history on the flower show.
Yes, that's me.
Get out of town.
Yeah, that was the English exhibit. I mean, yeah.
Central feature or?
No, it wasn't. In fact, Russ Jones sent myself, my wife, and Roland and his wife to England to look at gardens there. We came back, and this was one of Plume's gardens.
Wow.
Over there with the bridge and all that sort of stuff.
What year was this? 85. Holy cow.
Yep. Anesta. That's a look at the Civic Center. I don't know any people in there. I think that's.
What is this?
That's the old Civic Center, isn't it? No, it's not. No. What the heck is it? I don't know.
It's a flower show model?
Is that at the Armory?
This was like before.
They were back at the Army.
Armory, yeah. That's where they had the first preview party, was at the Armory.
Yeah.
That Ernesta actually scheduled. James McCarville? Who was the designer before Ed?
I think it was him. He was a landscape architect. Yeah, when I first started, I'm pretty sure it was him.
And Ed Samanko, he did the design, and this is 1972.
Oh, okay.
And then the show manager is James McCarville.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
And is that Margaret McCarville's dad?
I believe so.
No shit.
Yeah.
I knew she went back, but I didn't realize he was actually the show manager. No kidding. Look at you and your little bike.
Damn near kill myself.
I was gonna say, how would you ride that bike? It was like.
Well, that was
that floor gets so slippery when it's wet. Holy cow.
Yes, it does. And I took a tumble.
Oh God, remember this? That was the music theme. That was New Orleans.
Oh, okay.
And then remember we had the Steinway piano, the Johuli piano in the middle.
Exactly. Wow. Nifty.
Fran,
yeah.
Yep. Is that Bob? That's Bob up there.
Oh, that's a crazy Latin.
Carmen,
right. Yeah. Carmen.
She's still crazy.
Yeah.
She's great. Yeah, that's Carmen. Who's the other woman? And that's Fran. And then who's the woman? What's her name? She was the chair when we did movies.
Yeah.
She dressed up as remember she dressed up as for the coffee preview. She dressed up as Dorothy.
Right.
Do you remember that? I mean, you don't come to the coffee previews much. You got my questions?
Yes. Here.
So I will follow this, but kind of probably go all over the map.
Okay.
And I don't know if we can follow a little bit of chronological order here, I guess, from the beginning to now. But.
Right. Well, he wanted a brief description of the convention, of the Civic Center, to start off with.
Is that your first show? At
Yeah.
the convention? At the Civic Center, right?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, basically, the Civic Center was a large complex. At one end was a basketball arena where the pros played, and at the other end was the actual exhibit hall. And the exhibit hall was a layer 1 story down from the main floor, because the whole thing was built on a slope. underneath the main floor there was a garage. Okay, and I'll tell you little stories about that a little later, but the garage was strictly for car parking, and then to the far end there was above ground parking facility there. The unique thing about the Civic Center is the part that we had was the upper level was where the offices for PHS were. And there was glass that overlooked the entire exhibit area, which was phenomenal. It's, you know, you could look out and watch all the construction going on and the final thing. And then the guests came in and they went down this escalator, and right at the base of the escalator was the main central exhibit, which was done by various exhibitors throughout the period being there. So it always, you know, that was the one big thing when we moved to the convention center. You didn't have that just overlook of the entire show, which, you know, a lot of people commented on, complained about, and so on and so forth. The actual floor area, there was 2 entrances for trucks to come in. And the nice thing about that particular building, you could build against the wall. And that was one thing we really missed when we moved into the convention center. You could pile dirt, you know, mulch around it. You could build structures on it and everything. So it gave great support. The ceilings were black, and they were fairly tall. But in order to, quote, bring the ceiling down a little bit, they strung wires and put what they called smilex vines, which is a nasty vine that comes out of the south. So Al Vick had the job, his crew had the job of putting that up, and that was one of the first things to go up. So we had all that up, and then the exhibitors came in. There was the main exhibitors were on the main floor, and then like underneath the offices, the ceiling was probably only 12 foot tall, and that's where all the competitive classes, bonsai was under there, and there was a sort of a food court down the far end of it. So, you know, that's basically the layout of the show. I can always remember doing the actual floor markings and all that. Ed Lindemann was sat on a cart, and his comrade pushed him around, and he marked the floor with a piece of chalk.
Who pushed him around?
One of the fellows that he worked, I forget the fellow's name, but he was Ed's second in command sort of thing. And that's the way he marked the floor. I don't know, doing the whole thing that way.
So the unions didn't have to mark a floor back then? Or
No.
Ed wouldn't let him?
No. So I started to mark the floor probably, I would say, last 4 or 5 years in the Civic Center. I marked the floor. And then I started to mark it in the convention center,
right,
which I got my hand slapped for afterwards. But anyway. So the big exhibitors back then were, was Charlie Gale, Gale's Nursery, Al Vick. Al Vick did all the native things. Roland Taylor was with Stiers, so he always did a mixture of things, but he did the central exhibit one time, which was a reminiscence of Fairmount Park, which people could walk through and it was a very popular exhibit. Bill Judd came from Jersey and did his native thing there. There was Robert Montgomery, which is a big one, between Waterloo Gardens, and there was huge competition between Montgomery and Gale and Waterloo. Gale, I think, pioneered proper forcing of perennials. He did a superb job on perennials, and it was just blown away every year that he brought something new and unusual in every year, and just kind of.
Did he force his own?
Yes.
He basically had his own greenhouses and had his own forcing, and he honed that in.
Yeah. And I think John Story picked up an awful lot from Gale.
Did John work for him, or
I don't think so.
Or just got to know him and picked up a lot? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Then there was Stan Layton. He would bring in sections of a stone wall every year. No matter what kind of exhibit he had, this stone wall appeared in some form or another. He was able to switch it around and move it from one area to another, and it was just like, and even he started in the convention center too, and that stone wall ended up in the convention center the first couple of years. So, but a really great bunch of guys. We always had Stiers was in charge of basically their own exhibit, and they did help put up the bonsai, and always and a few other exhibits they were involved in there. Bartlett, they did Bartlett's exhibit to start off with, but we always got involved with doing all the extra stuff, like Ed would come up with, and was in charge of tearing down, and that's the
So when you first started working on the show, you were working for Stiers, right?
Yeah.
You weren't working as your own individual at that point?
No, that didn't happen until 93, 94.
94.
Yeah.
So right before we went to the convention center.
Yes.
You broke off on your own and.
Yeah. Well, I left Stiers, and Jane and Ed called me up and said, "Do you want to expand what you want to do at the show?" So that's where I kind of involved with what I am these days. So,
yep.
There was little problems with the conventions with the Civic Center, particularly on teardown. It had these expansion joints in it, and they were really bad. You hit them the wrong way, they moved. And one day, Charlie Berger hit one of these plates on teardown, and it went into the basement.
Oh, no.
It went into the back window of a BMW.
Oh, down below?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So, there was little things like that. And water was mostly, they didn't have the ports like they do at the convention center. So a lot of times pipe was laid underneath the mulch for fair distances, and it was always a problem at teardown, and one of the big factors was make sure the water is turned off. Well, one day it wasn't. So we had water flowing, heavy water flowing for probably several hours before somebody came out
and was able to turn it off?
Turn it off. And of course all this water goes down into the...
Are you still using front end loaders and all that stuff at the Civic Center as well too, just like we do? You for cleaning up all the mulch and cleaning up all the...
Yeah. Wasn't nearly as much.
Yeah.
And then when it got down to a point that we had to get out of there, some of it went over the fence to the railway tracks over right there.
So you just bypassed the truck and right off the back.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So
what was your first show? What was your very first show? What do you remember?
That was in 1971. I was going to Temple in landscape design, horticulture, and
so you were a student?
Yeah, I was a student. Yeah.
Did you work with Temple? Was Temple doing an exhibit at that point, or not?
Yeah, they were doing one, but I was I was not involved with their exhibit whatsoever, but I was working at Stiers.
Right.
So it just happened to be spring break was at the time we set up for the flower show. So I got involved with that. My boss was Darrell Lewis. Darrell took me down, showed me the ropes for the first show, and at the end of the show, he says, "You got it from now on. I don't want to ever see this place again." He hated the flowers.
How old were you?
How old was I?
Yeah, you were.
Well, I spent 4 years in the Navy,
okay.
So I was in my mid 20s,
Okay.
I guess. Yeah. So he just said, well, you know these people, you're working with them. I trust you know what you're doing. So that was it. And then
He never came back.
Never came back.
Never ever.
Nope. Russ would come down.
Sure.
But not Darryl. He absolutely refused to.
That's so funny.
No.
So what do you remember? Do you remember the theme of that show, 71?
It had acacias in it.
Oh, the acacia. Yeah. I've seen pictures of that.
Yeah. And right there, you come down the escalator, and there's nothing but yellow acacias.
Yeah.
I mean, they were beautiful, absolutely huge.
Yeah, wasn't that a collection from somebody out in New York or New Jersey or something
I
like
think
that?
he is Jersey.
Jersey?
Yeah, somewhere. But the big factor that we used to do there is Tuesday night, every bulb in the place. We used a lot of bulbs back then. Tractor trailer loads from a guy in Jersey, in Vineland, New Jersey. Every Tuesday night, they all got changed.
So most of the color was, so every Tuesday, so you changed them halfway through, similar to what we do now from a bulb standpoint.
Yeah, but a lot
But a lot more, right, absolutely.
A heck of a lot more.
So back then, so when was there the shift into more perennials? And so you said that Gail did a lot and really should have honed in on the perennials. So
Yeah.
before that, mostly bulbs for color, mostly bulbs for the flowers?
Yes, definitely.
When did you see the shift into...
Well, he, as I say, he was perfecting things, and I would say by the mid-'70s, you were starting to see a lot more perennials in the show.
Yeah.
And a little more diverse plant material type of thing, too.
Right.
The one factor that stood out of my mind, and I don't remember exactly what year it was fairly close to the end, I think. Saturday we had a snowstorm, a wicked snowstorm, probably one of the worst I've seen in this area. I was supposed to get some kind of award that day, at the dinner, at the luncheon and that, and it never happened. The place was shut down, and so Ed calls me up and he says, whenever you can get in Sunday, get your crews in. So about probably late afternoon, the roads were starting to open up, and we brought a fleet of trucks in, and Ed said, I want all this out of here by the time the exhibitors get here. In the front, Charlie Gale had done it, but it was mostly with annuals, and it was a big bank of annuals and that.
So you could just bulldoze that, right?
So Ed said, get rid of them. Well, Charlie had a fit. He nearly said, I'm not coming to the show anymore, because he wanted those annuals back.
Oh, wow.
And we got rid of them all.
What was he going to do with them, though?
Oh,
I guess he had greenhouses. He
yeah.
could store them and then plant them in jobs afterwards, right? I
Yeah,
guess.
exactly.
Containers and stuff.
But that was one heck of a storm. Like I say, I don't remember seeing one as bad as that one was.
Wasn't that one where the city shut down? They actually shut the highways down to shut the
Oh,
whole,
yeah. Yeah, everything was shut
I
down.
think Lisa had a story about that back in the day where she said she actually got on the news, was being interviewed and told everybody, well, we're still open, come on down.
Oh,
And
no.
literally the next report after her was the city's shutting down at that point. So yeah. I think that was the same snowstorm. So
Yeah, it was a wicked storm. So it was basically the Civic Center.
So transition, how far in advance did you start talking about the convention center, the new convention center, and the move to? And was it a easy decision? Was it a quick decision? Was it like you're definitely moving, or did you actually have to? Because the Civic Center still existed for years after the convention center opened up. So
yeah, and I don't think there was a lot happening at the Civic Center. I think they were still playing basketball, but I don't know too much about what was going on. But I mean, back in the early stages, we heard that the city didn't want us in the convention center.
of course, they still don't.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Even after how many years since '96, they still don't want us in the convention center.
So it took I would say they finally agreed on it probably about 2 years before.
Yeah, because I think it opened in '94, and then we didn't get there till '96, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, walking into that building was like, oh my God, can't do anything on the walls. That was a big factor. Yeah, so everything had to be in islands and so on and so forth. But I mean, just the vastness of the thing was shocking.
Yeah.
And the whole aspect of it was, I mean, it was great. We had water, we had electric, you know, fairly convenient. The unions were a big question because we dealt with unions at the Civic Center, but not nearly like they were at the convention center. It was just, well, you can't sneeze without getting permission.
Well, and it was new still too, so they were still trying to plot out their whole territory and their responsibility still, I'm sure.
Exactly. So, once you got used to that, you know, things went along. I marked the floor for 2 years, and then I was told that I was not to do that anymore. That was a carpenter's job. So you know, okay, fine.
But you still had to oversee that. But
yeah.
And you still oversaw it.
Yeah.
You know, all the way up till we left.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me about the first days and the first shows at the convention center. Like, what were some of the, obviously the height and the scale of that building was unbelievable. So how did that change things? What did it do from an exhibit standpoint? What did it do from a planning standpoint?
Well, back then we built a lot of walls.
Yeah, I remember.
A lot of walls between the exhibitors. Some of them was high as 16 foot tall.
Yep.
So, I mean, that was a big factor. The exhibitors brought in bigger plant material. A lot of big cut trees that we strung from the ceilings and that. So, you know, that helped to bring it down. Lighting was a big shock to the exhibitors, a huge shock.
Did you do much theatrical lighting in the Civic Center?
Oh, that was the Civic Center. There was an electrician named Al Manning. Al did, him and maybe one other guy.
2 people.
Did the lighting, and it was a 500 watt, 1,000 watt, or 15 watt, and you could have 1 or 2 or 3 of them, and that was about it. And they just hung these things in there, you know, about like that.
Yeah.
And that was the lighting. Everybody was happy with it. And then when we went to the convention center,
it was like oh man,
good Lord. And the price, I mean, lighting was just incidental as far as the cost at the Civic Center.
Right.
Just absolutely incidental. So,
but exhibitors still had to pay for lighting. They paid for those few lights that they got.
Yeah.
But were all like the general lights on, and they just did like little spotlights and little extra accent lights at the Civic Center?
They were able to cut some of the general lights out.
If they needed to, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, they didn't have this vast manifold. Oh, we can do this and that. Al had to get up and unscrew a bulb or something.
Right. There wasn't a switch.
Exactly. He was great. He was a tremendous guy. He unfortunately he couldn't take his talents to the convention center.
Right.
But pretty nice fella.
So who did you work with from a lighting standpoint at the convention center? Wasn't that the camera shop folks, or was that later?
I think that was later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't, you know, it's like now, you know, don't do a whole heck of a lot with the lighting people.
Yeah. So I remember the walls when I first came.
Yeah.
I do remember all the walls that we used to put up and create backdrops for exhibits and things like that, and they would do murals and do other things with big trees.
Yeah.
Interesting. What was the did almost all the exhibitors transfer over from Civic Center, or were there,
yeah? I would say we lost very few indeed.
Right.
It was an experience, and they were all hooked on the flower show, so
yeah,
it worked out.
Tell me a little bit more about the unions when you came over to the convention center, and I've heard lots of crazy stories. Probably some that we probably shouldn't talk about, but
unfortunately, and it stemmed from the actual beginning of construction of the convention center, that the carpenters and laborers didn't get along. In fact, at the very beginning, the cops had to go in and break them up, fights when they were pouring the foundations and all that sort of stuff. So
Wow.
this just carried on to going into the building itself. So for quite a while, I mean, it went on, well into your era.
Sure, absolutely.
That these two would go at it at times and then kind of show some pieces of iron that shouldn't be shown.
Yeah, right.
So unfortunately, I got involved with a couple of those, but you just kind of back out and say,
right,
you're not going to split it up. Bob Ballstrom would go in there and tell them,
knock it the heck off.
Yeah, get your act together and all that sort of stuff.
When did you start working with Bob? You and Bob worked together for a long time.
Yes, Bob back in the Civic Center used to do the Pico exhibit.
Okay.
And they always had it just as you came in one of the entrances against the wall, and they'd bring in their trucks and put up building poles and all that sort of stuff. So Bob went work with them, and I think he started to work with Jimmy Wadsworth at that time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Jimmy was running the carpenters.
Most of the carpentry
at
the Civic Center, right?
Center, and went into so it didn't have a whole lot to do with him until we moved into the convention center. And from that point on, Bob and I worked real well.
You were a team. When
Yeah.
I first got here, the two of you, I learned really quickly. Might not have appeared that, but I learned really quickly that I needed to listen and watch you two. You guys had the most experience of anybody on the floor, and I was like, I need to learn from these guys. These guys know how to work the system, knew how to work what was going on. So I appreciate all. And you guys basically took me under your wing,
Right.
and said, hey, here's what you need to do. And I'm sure I asked more questions than you wanted to answer, but
Well, it worked out.
it did.
You made changes, and in the long run, they were great changes. I think the entrance areas was your major factor. That we had entrances before,
Right.
but they weren't stand out. They did not stand out. They were there. Sometimes they were done by an exhibitor, and sometimes it was just structures that Ed had come up with and various things like that. But you expanded it a hell of a lot. So
I know for a fact that my first couple, though, were not great. Because that was still learning and still trying to understand what to do and what couldn't you do. And God, that first one, I think the first one I designed fully was in 2005 when we did America the Beautiful, and Kevin Burke was working with me.
Oh, yeah.
And remember we had, the funniest thing, I think one of the early on when I had a relationship with the American Horticultural Society, because some folks from Disney were there that left and before I left Disney. And so they had the original gates to the White House. Remember that? That was like the big thing. The original gates to the White House were coming to the flower show, and that was a big deal. And they came in these great big boxes, and we got them on the floor and opened them up and stood them up, and we were like, that's it? Like, remember they were like these little tiny small things, like, oh my God, everybody was like thinking that they were going to be these grand, gorgeous, big, awesome things, and everybody stood them up, and everybody was like, oh, is that it? That's it? And I was like, oh no, this is not going to be good. I'm not going to be here very long. So, but 19 years later, but it was fun. I think the central feature that I would love to redo is the 2006 central feature that Michael worked with me on from Steyer's when we did Mother Nature.
Oh, okay.
And that one was, in my head, obviously looked a lot different than the actual exhibit, but certainly that scale and what it should have been. Now that I know what I know, and now that we've all worked together and know that I feel like that one could be pretty spectacular. And if we did it, that's the only one that I would want to redo.
Oh,
I want to forget about 2005 completely. I don't even ever want to do that again. But the rest of them, that was the one that I would really love to redo again, because I think I would have in these days, if knowing what I know now, I would have waited. I took way more than I could chew in that exhibit.
Yeah.
And so anyway. You work a lot with the volunteers, a lot with the competitive classes, and that's been since I've known you. You've been sort of their go-to person for almost everything on the show floor. Has that always been the way, or did you grow into that, or did you?
I probably grew into it once you know, I started working the full-time thing, definitely. We did a very limited, when I was working with Steyer's, they did a little bit of stuff with the classes, but and it wasn't until, you know, the convention center that I really started to work with them.
Right. Tell me some stories, because I gotta believe that there are some volunteers or some garden club ladies that stand out in your mind. Is there anybody that sort of stands out in your mind? You might not need to know names or anything, but you certainly, I'm sure there's some stories that you can tell.
Of all of the chairs, I think Midge was one of the best that I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
She was super. You know, she worked up when she had her own garden club thing, and but that gal could put out fires. You know, if there was one of the chairs of such and such would go and get all bent out of shape because things didn't go exactly as planned.
Yep.
That lady could put the fire right out.
Yeah, Midge Ingersoll. She was one of the ones I leaned on heavily when I first got here too. She was a very good mentor and I learned a lot from her too.
Yeah, I really do. You know, no matter what year it is, there's always problems. The year that I guess when we first did the front porches, and everything had to be hung on those walls. Well, they built the walls differently, and nothing matched up, so they had to redo things in the back behind the wall in order to support the doors and the windows.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Bob didn't put enough bracing or something like that behind it. Didn't we pull through the wall at all, or was it just built differently?
It was built, I think when we looked at it afterwards, we started off with a 2-foot piece, and it shouldn't have been a 2-foot, it should have been a 4-foot,
right,
and gone down the aisle like that. And when we were doing it, everything was off. All the supports behind it, because they built certain pieces of 2-bys in there to attach it all.
Yeah.
And it wasn't there. So they had to kind of mark it, and somebody behind there put a piece of 2x4 so you could hook to it.
Right.
So, that was probably one of the big, and it, you know, with them all standing around waiting and waiting and waiting. Oh, we got a lot of grief for that.
I bet.
Probably the
well, they're on such a tight time frame too.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
So.
I think the most demanding people are the miniatures.
Really? Miniature settings?
Yes.
Yeah.
They expect perfection from day one. They don't communicate a whole lot with you until maybe the chair shows up a few hours before, and then starts screaming that, you know, this is wrong or something to that nature. But
right.
You know, that improved over the years, but in the early stages it was tough.
Yeah.
I can't.
Do you have a favorite class that you loved to be in the past? Do you know anything stand out, or a couple?
I think my favorite class is the gardens. They got a lot more freedom, and they do a heck of a lot more. I think that's definitely my favorite class.
Yeah.
The renovations of that have been done over the years, as far as the niches, and they used to be all one big wall, right, and with just cubby holes in the things. And,
right.
You know, with going with the compartmentation and that type of thing, was a big improvement.
Yeah, well, it was to basically help us limit the amount of labor that we needed to do. That was been a big challenge, and that's why we eliminated walls. That's why we made those, you know, all modular.
Yeah, all of the photo walls and the pressed plant walls. I had big improvement.
Yeah,
made life a lot simpler.
Much easier for all of us.
Yeah.
entrance gardens, you've worked with me on almost every entrance garden I worked on. And I know you worked on probably a lot with Ed too. Is there any that stand out that you're like, hey, this is...
Oh, I like your water garden, the water gardens. That entrance there with all the water coming down and all that.
Oh, yeah, with the water theme? With the you like that the best,
Oh,
really?
That was one of the best ones I liked. It really was. It gave you a really neat feeling when you walked through there.
The rainforest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best.
Oh, interesting.
One of the worst was probably Big Ben.
Yeah. Yeah.
That wasn't your fault.
It was definitely not all my fault, but I will take the blame for that one for hiring somebody who designed something that wasn't up to what we wanted it to be. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. That was...
I remember Big Ben. The one thing that stands out to me is when we were setting up Big Ben.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing worked.
Tell me about, like, you remember what we had, like, things didn't fit, things so we had to have... Go ahead, tell us the story of like what we had to do for Big Ben.
Well, it had kind of a framework in that, but most of it was not made to hang things on. So we had to bring it all down and bring in a welder and reinforce all the welds in the thing, and it took a lot of time to do that.
A lot of time.
A huge amount of time.
I think we welded too at night after everybody left. They wouldn't let us weld during the day because of fire hazard or whatever.
Yeah, oh yeah, we had to have a fire watch and all that sort of thing. So, that was...
So once we got it all that fixed and started to hang it, then what happened?
What the hell did happen? Oh, the forks?
Yeah, because they hung the... Because at this point we're late, right? We had to redo all the hanging mechanisms and re-weld everything, and they hung the motor too short, or they couldn't get the motor high enough.
Exactly.
So we couldn't lift the whole thing up high enough to get all the pieces. So it was basically we figured out how to start from the top and work our way down instead of working from the bottom and working our way up. And I remember like you coming to me or somebody coming to me and going, we can't fit the bottom pieces underneath. They're like 5 inches too short.
Exactly.
Or too big. And we were like, well, what are we going to do? Yeah. So we grabbed the riggers and put them on forklifts, and there's 4 forklifts on each corner and lifted it up, throw the pieces underneath, and lowered it back down. Yeah. I'll never forget that. That was one of the scariest. I was like, oh my God, if this thing falls, we're done. Like, we're not going to be able to open the show. We wouldn't have been able to open it if it fell.
Exactly.
Oh my God. That was crazy. Another entrance garden that I'm working with Joe Cugliata on the Italy show. Yeah. Loved that central feature. But one of my favorite stories then was where we thought we had a leak. We had a pond. How many gallons were in the front fountain? God, thousands of gallons. It was huge. It was like, how long? It was like probably been 30 feet long.
Oh yeah.
If not 50 feet long.
Yeah, I would say it's 40 or 50 feet long. Yeah. That was big. And was that the one where there was a big hanging basket that fell on it?
No.
No, that was the Italy one, I think. That where we had
Oh no, that was the hanging basket one that fell was during Festival de las Flores, the Puerto Rican theme.
Oh, okay.
I remember that because the lights melted the plastic hangers or something. Remember that where they fell into the water?
Yes.
No, for Italy. Remember we were working with, what was the fountain company that we worked with? His name was Joe, wasn't it? Out of Aston?
Yeah.
Aston, PA? Ponds and Gardens or something like that? That wasn't Ponds and Gardens, was it?
Yeah, I think it was.
No, it wasn't Ponds and Gardens. It was... Anyway, whoever it was, you came to me and said, I think we have a leak in this pond, in this fountain. And I was like, oh no, because and we were already filling it up, and we were 2 days before we opened the show, and we had a lot to do,
and it was a lot of water.
And so we grabbed him and brought him over because he was the one that worked with us on the liners to check it and see if we could find one. And we didn't think we thought we were gonna like just leave it and not have to do anything.
No.
And then we left it, and we all went our own separate ways to go figure out the show. And he came running to me and said, or we came running to you or whatever. We all come running to the central feature. He had knocked a block off, looking down into the pond, and put a giant gash in the pond. We were like, oh my God, we're going to flood out this entire thing. So we had to pump. You had to pump it all out with the...
Yeah. Grab
put
pumps,
a new...
put a whole new liner. Fortunately, you could get one.
Thank God, because it was that big.
Yeah.
It was huge.
Exactly.
My God, I'll never forget that. That was probably another one of the scariest. Those two things I think were the scariest entrance garden experiences I've ever had.
Oh,
it was
definitely.
crazy.
Yeah. So, water is always a favorite of mine.
Yeah, always. All right, so in the convention center from 96 to 2020.
Right.
And then we have the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And then we got to move outside. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me your impression. Tell me what you were thinking. All that stuff. I'm moving from indoors. We were indoors for the entire history of 193 years. Never been outside.
Exactly.
To now we have to go outside, and we have to produce this thing in less than a year.
Well, it was initially a shock. I mean, it really was. In fact, I didn't think we were even going to do a show that year.
Yeah,
last
me neither.
year. And and then we did a walk through the park, and I said, "Oh my goodness, how are we going to do all this?" And just the more you got into it, the amount of tents and other logistics we had to do was just mind-boggling when you think about it. I mean, we were spoiled at the convention center.
Oh yeah, electric
at
every port, every 30 feet.
Bathrooms, all works.
Yep.
And the more we got into it, everybody seemed to be trying to do their best to work together. Fortunately, Nick was a big plus on that show. Big plus.
Huge.
Yeah. I mean, if we had somebody that was not easy to work with, that would have been a disaster show.
Yep.
But he pulled things off pretty well and deserves a lot of credit for how it happened and everything. And everybody did. I mean, Joe did a great job working with people. I think the unions were outstanding. Didn't have hardly any problems with them whatsoever.
Never been, yeah.
Yeah, so it came off, and I was happy to see that it did. And I'm really anxious to see this show. I think it's going to be a huge improvement, and I think there's a lot of thought went into it, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch the amount of passion and the amount of dedication that people have for this show. It's been around for so long, right? The tradition of it is so huge, and most of us have grown up. Most of us who are working on the show have literally grown up in this show,
right?
Or they've seen it. Even the union folks have grown up and seen the show. Their fathers probably worked on the show, right? So,
exactly.
To watch everybody pull together last year and actually. Because I don't think any of us thought we were going to get these doors open. I thought, and not necessarily once we got on site, but I think the planning of it, we were like, this is so crazy, this is so intense, and so much infrastructure that we have to bring into this. Can we even do it? Once we got on site, I think we all sort of put our heads down, and never felt we weren't going to get it finished once we got on site.
Oh, no.
But the planning and the all the logistics and planning ahead of time, I just was like, I don't know if this is going to happen. I was the most stressed out I've ever been on a show, and it's people like yourself, it's people like Nick, it's people like Joe who have been working on the show. And Nick was new to the show, but he understood the tradition, and he understood that this was needed to get up, and the union folks understood that this needed to get up, not just for the flower show itself, but for Philadelphia and the pandemic and getting through that. And that's what was so special. That last year's show will stand out to me as probably one of the most special shows that I've ever worked on, and I think it's because of all the people, yourself included, that really just made sure that this show was going to happen, and it would never have happened without all the people that worked on that show, and it was pretty special, and I am excited. And we just had a presentation about 21 or 22. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Now that we have some time to actually think about and be creative,
exactly.
This outdoor show is going to be pretty special. The second one.
That entrance arch, you should do the lighting that Longwood did in their arch that they had.
Oh, so yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it does that. That'd be pretty cool. What else? Any other stories that because we're pretty have made it to 21. Any other stories that you want to share that you think people would love to hear?
There's certain people I'd really like to point out. Jimmy Wadsworth was there at the beginning of the convention center as the head carpenter, in charge of the carpenters, and then he trained Bob. So, back then there was Bob, Ed, Jane, and Rob was involved.
Rob.
Yep. It was a good crew.
It was a great crew.
I mean, it really was. It was, we could probably do just about anything with that group.
Absolutely.
And
you did.
You're right.
Put that show on the map.
Right.
Literally, you all put that show on the map on the world scale. It really did.
But one of the people that came to mind was Lorraine with the cabana.
Oh yeah.
That lady was dear.
She was.
And it was always, unfortunately, she was one of the last exhibits to go up.
Yep.
And she put up with so much stuff, and just was able to. But
miss her, yeah. She's no longer with us, but she was a great lady.
And I also like to point out the Stan Amy and his family.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been with that show a long time, and they put a lot into it. Particularly all the competitive classes and that, and then was Stan doing his own thing with the men's garden club. I just feel that they need some recognition.
Absolutely.
They're great people.
And their family and their siblings.
Yes,
exactly. It's generations that are involved with that show, and all
Right.
their friends, and it's really special to watch.
Yeah, definitely. What else we got?
What is it about the flower show that keeps people around so long? Why have you been around so long? Why have you stuck with it? And you and I have had this. We went out to lunch a number of years ago when I knew you were getting ready to retire and sell your nursery, and I was like, okay, well, if he's going to retire from there, I'm assuming he's going to retire from the flower show. And you told me, these are your words. I'll probably paraphrase a little bit. You said that as long as I can walk and get out of bed, I will do the flower show. What is it about it, the flower show, that because you are pretty special to the show. You've basically dedicated almost your entire life to helping and making sure that this flower show is a success. You talk about the Amy's, you talk about Ed, was here 25 years, you talk about Bob, same. Jimmy Wadsworth was here forever. What is it about the show that keeps people around that long?
I think for me, it's an ego trip.
It's an ego trip. Interesting. Okay.
It is something completely different from most of the rest of my life, as far as basically being involved with landscape and that sort of thing. But to go in and see a bare floor, and say 10 days later, I walk that floor on Friday night or Thursday night, whenever it may be, say, damn it, I've done a big part of this. I've been part of this thing. This is special. This is the biggest indoor flower show in the world, and I'm part of it.
Yep.
And it is an ego trip. It is certainly, and even tear down Tuesday night, most truck rolls out of there, floor is bare, except for some staging and that. Say, damn it, we did it again.
Yep.
We have cleaned this place up and made it back to the way it was. So I feel very proud of being part of this show. It has been a major part of my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got married around this show.
Yep. Many people did.
We were married on the 15th of February. We spent 2 weeks in California, Came back the next day, I started the show. My second child was born right after the show.
Right.
And, I think we were still doing teardown, so I had to stop in to see my wife and then go to the show, which God. I have not heard the end of that one either. Both of the boys spent time with me coming in and doing maintenance when I was with Steyer's, and that's what I used to do in the evening, was come in and do maintenance during the day.
Yeah. So they've helped do maintenance?
Yeah.
Yeah. My kids do the same thing. Yeah. My kids look forward to it.
Yeah.
When they get to that age, it's like 16 and they can come and hang out with Dad and work on the show. It is, and you see a lot of people do that. We have a lot of people that bring their kids in when they're 16 and be able to work with us.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if I told you, I forget which one it was, but we came in for teardown, and nobody else was there. And my youngest son had a bucket, and he went through all the ponds and cleaned out the ponds.
How much money did he get? Holy God! He
it was
probably could even pick up the bucket.
Exactly.
He's probably still spending that money. Holy cow!
Yeah. I forget why nobody else could be in there, but it was just one of those things.
That's too funny.
Yeah.
That's great.
He cleaned it out.
Well, I have to say, from my standpoint, I personally thank you for everything that you've done for me. All the coaching, all of the mentorship, all of the learnings that I've learned. I've learned so much from you to produce the shows that we do, and I can't imagine doing a show without you. And hopefully we won't have to worry about that.
There comes a time.
There will be coming a time. I know, I understand that. But I was very happy when you said to me that you were, as long as you can walk, and you would still come, because I've always enjoyed working with you, and I've always enjoyed that show. And on behalf of PHS, this show wouldn't be what it is without you. And there's a lot of people who you can say that about, or few people you can say that about, and you are one of them, that this show would not be where it is today if it wasn't for what you do for the show. So
certainly appreciate
that.
It's been a pleasure. At times it hasn't, but I mean,
understand.
Every probably Wednesday, Thursday prior to opening, you say, "I am not coming back to that damn place." And all the clubs start to jump on you for one thing or another.
What's the one show where you're like, "There's no way we're opening the doors"? Do you remember a show where you said, "There's no way we're going to open up these doors"?
We had one at the Civic Center, and it was docks out front with sailing boats in the water and all that sort of thing. And we had some problems with the water situation. We had problems. It was probably one of the times we had problems with unions. They kind of backed out us one day, and we finished painting the dock about an hour before we opened up for.
So you could still smell the paint.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and still had to do some planning around it. That was one of the tightest ones we probably ever had.
Yeah.
Florists were always a problem, but
they're always last minute.
Always last minute. Always. I don't think I ever remember a major exhibitor, waiting and having to have literally push them out the door, but some of the florists.
Yeah.
And there was a certain other gentleman that had a little green shack that.
He was always late too. Yeah, he's no longer with us as well either.
Exactly.
The tulip, Mr. Snyder.
Mr. Snyder, yeah.
He was a trip. I can tell you the personalities that we interact with, and Paul, you do this more than I do because you're down in the trenches with the garden club ladies. But if I had to do it over again, I would take 4 years in college of psychology to learn how to deal with all the different personalities that we deal with on a regular basis.
Yeah, you have to run with the tides at time. You just you can't get pissed off at them.
No.
you can't tell them to go to hell and just walk away. You just got to work with them,
right,
and listen to their stuff at times.
Oh yeah.
And
we become very good listeners on that floor, don't we?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, without a doubt. Very good listeners. You have to. I mean, you definitely do. There was one incident with Ed one time. Ed was calm, cool, and collective.
Yeah.
We're very much laid back and could take a lot. And one of the exhibitors, he was from Bucks County, I can't think of his name, but at the very end on Friday afternoon, he put gravel, stone around the outside of his exhibit with nothing to retain it.
Oh God.
So I went up to Ed, I said, you got to do something here. So he went down, and the guy gave him a bunch of crap about, well, you know, this is my exhibit, I'll do what I want. Ed said, it's dangerous. Somebody's going to step on that, and the stone's
fall
going
and break their head, yeah.
And the guy continued on. Ed went over and kicked that stone as hard as he could, and it went everywhere. And said, you get this shit out of here right now. I never heard anything like that before in my life. But, yeah. Oh, yeah, I'll do that.
Exactly. They changed their mind. Yeah, Ed definitely had, when he had to pull out that card, he pulled it out only when he had to, though.
Yeah, exactly.
He knew the being laid back was, then again, the leader, all of us staying calm helps everybody else stay calm. And all of us who have been through the show over the years, there's nothing that hasn't happened that we haven't seen or that you haven't seen. Like, you've been around 50 plus, like it's like, yeah, you listen, you become good listeners, you hear their story, and you understand their plight. But at the end of the day, you're going to get through it, and you'll be fine. And for all of us to have that sort of attitude from the production team, which is instilled from the first time somebody walks in, any new players that come, we always instill that and they watch us, and they see how we react. And when we stay calm, they stay calm. And you've taught me that from the very beginning when I first got here, and watching you and how calm you stay when you talk to the exhibitors or the competitive classes.
Jane was a good person as far as PR for the show. She walked that floor every day and talked to damn near any exhibit, everybody, including the workers and so on and so forth. That left a definite big impression on our exhibitors from all ends of it.
Yeah.
And
I don't probably do it as much as she did, but that was something that I learned from her right away, of being on the floor all the time and not being in the office, and trying to say hi to as many people and talk to as many people as you can. It gets hard at times when you know how much is going on, but it's something you have to do.
Yeah, definitely. It's very unfortunately, we had a president didn't do that, and that was not good.
Yeah,
not good at all.
It's unbelievable how much of a ripple effect that can have too.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Unbelievable.
Ernesta nearly fired me one night.
She did? What? Come on. How did you not tell that story early on? Why?
I was just looking at the picture. Well, at closing, we were all assigned our stations, and mine was at the bottom of the escalator. And we always put hyacinths around the bottom of the escalator.
Yep. So everybody could smell it when they came on down.
Yeah. And she put out the word that you do not let any of the customers. You've told me this story before. This is great. Yes. And I was standing there, and this dear little lady came up to me and said, could I take one of those? And being a soft-hearted mush that I am, I said, sure. Well, she picked up one, and then it was like a herd of people just grabbing and taking whatever they want. And she came over to me and said, you get those people out of here, I don't want to see you again.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, she went into it. I think Ed saved my butt on that one.
I've had to have, because That can be very scary, and people don't understand it and how much of a safety hazard and how much it really is a big safety concern of once you give one thing away. That's why we have a very controlled giveaway process now, right? So you can't give things away that night. No. You just can't. No. It becomes a free for all, and it's very dangerous, really dangerous.
Very much so.
Crazy. All right, anything else?
I think that's about it.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for this. This is great. I'm glad
I'm glad it could help, and I appreciate you asking me to do it.
Another question for our sake.
Yes.
Who else should we interview? Who else should we be on this list that we probably haven't interviewed before?
Probably if you could get Bob to come in.
I know. If we could get Bob to come in, he would be great from a story standpoint.
Oh, absolutely.
Think he would come in?
I'll talk to him. I talk to him on a regular basis.
You do? Yeah. How's he doing?
Good. Yeah, he's been very busy. He works a lot at Bryn Mawr Rehab.
He's been working there for a while.
Yeah, a long time. And, he was laid up. I think he had some back work done.
Okay.
Which he needed.
How's his daughter?
Daughter's great.
Good.
Doing extremely well.
Good.
Yeah. So.
Tell him I said hi. If he'll hear it.
Yeah. Rob would probably be a good one if you can get him down.
Rob won't return any.
No, he doesn't.
Mm-mm. Do you talk to him much?
I talked to him probably late last year.
He just had his birthday. I sent him a text for his birthday. He didn't send anything back.
It's unfortunate. Rob was a good guy.
Still is.
Worked
his butt off.
He did. He really did.
He and his team.
Yep. Exactly.
Think he'll come back? Do you think he would come back for the indoor show next year?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Doesn't need to, obviously, but.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, he's got so much going on. It's ridiculous.
Any other? I know when we did the 175th, we did a lot of interviews with people during that 175th book that they created. So there's a lot of that there. Is there anybody else since then? Like, is there any volunteers that Midge we haven't done? We should do Midge.
Yeah, definitely should do Midge. Yeah. Is she working this year? She's in the volunteers.
So she'll probably come up. The mini settings we're not doing this year because of no really place to put them.
Oh, really?
And we're gonna hold off. And there was some issues with some of the. She feels like she wants to help mentor some of them more to get them to the level that she thinks that they should be. So she's working that way.
Oh, okay.
So she's helping us that way.
Good.
She'll be to the show, I gotta believe, but the mini settings are not coming in this year.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how.
Did you do Jane?
Oh yeah, Jane's. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Keep thinking Hopi Coates. We haven't done her or
right.
Her and yeah. She was great. She was one of the first people I met. That was the first show that I experienced.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, I was hired in 2003. I came January 2003.
Okay.
So that show was happening.
Did you come up for this show prior to you being hired?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I interviewed in September and started in January. I mean, I had, my history. My dad used to exhibit. He used to do the FTV. He did the FTV exhibits too when I was in high school.
Okay.
84, 85, something like that.
Right.
But he did those exhibits 2 years, and I helped him do that. And then my grandfather has pictures. I have pictures from my grandfather when they exhibited back Smallwoods.
Oh, really?
Small exhibit, but I have pictures.